Mike here again, talking about the York 210 compressor. This is a kind of a second to the first video I did on finding York 210s. Went a little overboard here today. I did have this one here on the far right, and some initial tests. Seems to be functional for refrigeration. I mean, obviously it's air conditioning compressor, so it should work, but ripping out an old 86 Volkswagen and not really knowing how well the thing was gonna work. So I have another video on that, and some of my progress there. So I just wanted to talk about these. I just picked these up today, and there's a few differences in them, in both quality and features. So what we have here, like I said, this came out of an 86 Quantum, has Rotolock fittings on top, and then I ended up purchasing these back seating service valves from, I think, Tired Iron Fittings or tiredironssupply.com. Google search or something, you ought to be able to find it. But they were like $30 a piece or something, I'm not sure. But they were worth it because I wanted back seating service valves. They actually have guts in them, Trader guts, whatever you call them. I got two of them in 3/8 because that was the smallest I could get, and right now they're reduced down to 1/4 inch because that's just the size of the lines I was working with. But just the other night, I pulled the clutch pulley off, which turns out is really quite easy to do on these. I know some AC compressors it can be tough, but there's a bolt that threads into the center. This is a tapered shaft, keyed. After you remove that bolt, if you can't get a hold of it, what I actually ended up doing was putting power to the coil and then just wrapping a belt around it and just gripping the belt, and that connected the freewheeling pulley to the compressor, and I think it was a 13 millimeter, maybe 1/2 inch or something. I was able to pull that bolt out pretty easily, and then I think it's like a 1/2 inch bolt, this thread here. Just drive a bolt in there, and mine basically just fell off. I mean, it took hardly any effort at all. And I started to consider what I'm going to end up doing with this. I don't think my final drive system I want to work with is a V-belt. I don't think they're efficient enough. And I wanted to add mass. I want to add more weight, flywheel to this setup here. So, and I'm not necessarily sure that I'm going to continue using the coil. You know, it's nice having a clutch because I can get the thing up to speed and then engage it, but I could also do that with some sort of a bypass in the refrigeration lines themselves. So what I ultimately end up doing is drilling and tapping some holes, or just drilling holes, putting bolts through, and making a large wooden flywheel or a steel flywheel. Add some mass to this thing. Might even couple it to another shaft on its own bearings. I don't know yet. But anyway, I had a credit for the pick and pull, so I wanted to go and find myself another one. So I walked around the whole place knowing what vehicles to kind of look out for, and I discovered a 1977 Triumph. Apparently, I think the Triumph, like, motorcycle company, I guess they made cars for a while. But immediately was excited whenever I saw first the Rotolock fittings. These are back seating service valve fittings. There's no guts in these 1/4 inch access ports, but so I think I'll need to have good sealing caps on them. But I took them off, and they seem to be in decent shape. I'm gonna have to clean them up a little bit, but they have a 3/8 inch flare, and I think it's just like a 1/2 inch flare on this side. But what excited me was that, and the fact that the pulley itself is pretty damn heavy. It's got some flywheel characteristics to it, some added mass, which makes me think that I might want to utilize this pulley at least temporarily. But the bearing in this thing isn't as good, and one of these, the coil didn't seem to be working, but I haven't screwed around with it much. I'm not too concerned because I have plenty of them. So 2 cars away, I find another one, a 1980 Triumph. Also has service valves and everything, and it was in a little bit better shape. It felt a little nicer whenever I turned it over. I mean, it wasn't. I've found them before in a 1981 Ford Fairmont, and it was locked up. Also, a 75 AMC Wagoneer, bad shape, very rusty. very poor shape. But anyway, almost all the same features. A little nicer. I pulled it out, and then just down the ways was a I think it was 84 Volvo 240. Volvos are a great resource for these, and it was covered in oil. Every one I've seen out of a Volvo is just caked in oil, which is a good thing because it protects them pretty well. And every one that I've grabbed a hold of or turned very smoothly. I think they all, a lot of the ones that I've seen have good compression. But immediately I noticed whenever I turned it over, by the way, it has a 2-pulley clutch. Everyone I've seen has that. But right away I noticed this thing had R134 fittings. So I thought, well, that's kind of funny because, they kind of stopped using this style of compressor in the like 1991. It was pretty much the latest year I know of. So I thought, well, this thing's been retrofitted or it's been replaced. And this cap here got a little rubbed from an unruly belt. But anyway, whenever I got it back to the shop, I cleaned it up and pressure washed it, and it cleaned up real nice. You can see how it's much nicer than these other ones here. And looked at the data plate here, and it was 1998. So this thing was manufactured much later than these were originally factory equipped. And my first indication, actually, before I even looked at the date, was the quality of the coil there and the quality of the bearing. And this clutch, turned this thing over, it's all nice and black. It was. Figured this thing had been replaced. Well, maybe it wasn't just replaced, it was actually, the whole thing wasn't reinstalled. So somebody in that old Volvo wanted a working AC system. So getting them home here, I didn't notice this when I was cleaning them up before, but this shaft, I don't know if you can see that there, has a groove. The other ones do not. Now that groove indicates that this is not a 210, this is actually a 209. So instead of being 10.3 cubic inches, it's something like 9. I'm not sure what the exact number is. There's no data plate on it to give me any other information, but that's one of the ways to tell what the displacement of the compressor is. So even if this thing is in a little rough shape, I'm probably going to rebuild it. It's going to be fun to play with that, to have a little comparison with the different displacement. So I wanted to have a handful of these things because I'm probably going to beat on a few of them. And there's a few different things I want to experiment with. I might even actually drill holes in the towards the bottom of the stroke in through the bore of one of these compressors and play around with the flash gas intercooler and having suction lines that actually come back to the compressor whenever it's towards the bottom of its stroke, feeding it higher pressure refrigerant instead of passing it on to the evaporator. And this one's probably going to be my baby right here because it's newer. It got good compression. It's in good shape. I just have to swap out these flange type fittings for one of these heads here. So anyway, if you have any questions or anything, send a comment there, and